Who dat to you, Who Dat Nation? I hope you're having a wonderful, wonderful week so far. We're going to preview tonight the upcoming matchup between the New Orleans Saints and the Detroit Lions. Go over the headlines, go over the news, and, well, as kind of predictable, man, with it being such a, I hate to use the word negative, but I mean, it's been a pretty negative week for a lot of Saints fans. And when you have lost 2 games over the past 3 weeks and have only played 2 games, it's easy to be negative, right? So there's a lot to discuss. We're going to go over the injury report. We're going to go over Wil Lutz taking kicks at DA. Ooh, maybe. And then go over, of course, some of the matchup stuff that the Saints could win. It is possible. Like, it could legitimately happen. Now, I've already stated multiple times over the past couple weeks that I don't believe the Saints are going to win. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I'm changing my tune just to hype y'all up. But that doesn't mean that they can't win. That doesn't mean that there's not a pass. So we're going to talk about some of the things the New Orleans Saints can attempt to do to beat Dan Campbell's team. I mean, just to be honest, as much as I do like the Lions this year, they've given up the 24th most points in the NFL. I mean, their defense will give up points. They don't do a ton of turnovers, and there are ways to win against this team that is an offensive. I mean, and in a lot of ways, the Detroit Lions of today are very similar to the New Orleans Saints of like 2017, 2018, where the defense, or maybe even 2016, where the defense is good, but they still give up points, and the offense is just leading the way, right? So we'll see. Gabe, it's absolutely wonderful to see you, man. Always a pleasure. Hope you and the wife are doing well. It's funny that you mentioned that J-Bo should be starting this weekend because Rob Gronkowski agrees with you. And at this point, I'm at the stage of like, try anything, try everything to see what happens. And we'll just see what happens. But let's go over the injury report first for those who missed it. Basically no change from yesterday, which is a sad thing if you're a Saints fan. Cameron Jordan out, DNP with his ankle injury. Marcus May with the shoulder, DNP. Kendre Miller still out, DNP with that ankle. Rashid Shaheed with that thigh injury he suffered against Atlanta, DNP. Pete Warner also DNP with shoulder and oblique. And some of those potential players that could come in, we'll see. Tomorrow's injury report obviously be very telling, but I'll be honest, I don't expect some of these guys to show up. Also, even though he is in limited, it actually could be a positive for Chris Olave. Limited in practice this week. And as far as I know, if he actually gets cleared, it'll be the first player that got cleared that didn't have to miss an entire game coming off a concussion. So we'll see if Chris Olave is there. If not, missing him and Rashid Shaheed is obviously going to be a very big pain point for whoever's the quarterback, and it's Derek Carr. And I'll be honest, man, these past few interviews have definitely got me with Derek Carr. But anyway, Ryan Ramczyk limited, and then Blake Grupe limited. They did sign a kicker, Siebert, to the practice squad because of that injury. Lions injury is Alex Anzalone, DNP. He might miss his Saints revenge game. Jonah Jackson at guard is full, got upgraded. David Montgomery, running back for those that don't remember, full, got upgraded. Tracy Walker at safety, full. Fetu Melifonwu, full. The only person who is DNP that was practicing was Frank Ragnow, but it was clear on the injury report that was listed as a rest reason, and then Hendon Hooker was full. So Lions come in as a healthy squad. Crass, Gabe, Eric, 992, Mr. John Hamilton, Alpha Omega Stables, Brian W., Mac Tazzino, The Antonio, DJ Twigger, Mr. Jerry, Lester, Paul Parker, who dat to everybody. Come on into the channel, sit on down, and let's talk some who dats. I love you. I appreciate you. I'm so glad that you're here with our little community and family. Yeah, Frank Ragnow, former Arkansas Razorback. And honestly, a very good player. I mean, old as dirt, apparently. You know you got to be old as dirt when they start putting you on the take a break list. But, hey, we all get there. I'm on a take a break list, and I'm only 34. But in NFL years, that's like me being 74. So, yeah, real talk. New Orleans Saints are going to be going against a Jared Goff, who's been efficient this year. He's not been amazing, but he's been efficient. 18 TDs to 8 interceptions. Now, he's only been sacked on 4.7% of his dropbacks, which is not terrible, but it is not the lowest number in the league. But the New Orleans Saints are the third worst team in the NFL as of coming into this show in sacks. Still sitting at 18. Carl Granderson, really the only effective pass rush the New Orleans Saints have fielded this year. And it seems like teams have kind of caught are caught on because he's getting a lot more attention. And even with 5.5 sacks, he still is on pace to get double digits, but it's gotten tougher. Demario Davis, second on the team with 4. And sadly, this is the second year in a row that Demario Davis is like second on the team. I guess Caden Ellis was past him last year, but I remember Demario Davis was, I think, 6.5 sacks last year, right behind Caden Ellis. So New Orleans struggling in that regard as well. TD says we can't stop the run and we can't score. Probably not winning. I would say this, man. The biggest thing with this Detroit Lions team is they give up points. And I'm in no way, I've already been very clear. I think the New Orleans Saints lose this game. But one thing about the Lions that is going to plague them when they make the playoffs, because I do believe they'll make the playoffs, is this team gives up way too many points. For reference, your New Orleans Saints, who even defensively, we talk about have kind of falling out of that top 10 range, struggle busing, they're giving up 220 points, right, through 11 games. The Detroit Lions have given up 258 points. So, I mean, the Detroit Lions are giving up, as I said, the 24th most points in the league this year, while not being a team that forces a lot of turnovers. And they don't allow a ton of yards, but they're still allowing points, and that is something to be concerned about when you're trying to make a playoff push. Not that I'm trying to rain on their parade. I mean, I really love Dan Campbell, love Aaron Glenn, I love Ben Johnson. I actually do root for them when they're not playing the New Orleans Saints. If I could actually pick a team that I could say I want to win it this year, like I really want to root for, they're the team. It's them and the Texans. Like, if I could pick two teams that I just wanted to go to a Super Bowl because, like, I just love the culture they're building, I love what they're doing, Houston Texans and the Detroit Lions. Now, whether that ends up happening, well, we'll see. But we will. We're going into a game here where the Lions will give up points, and to go a little bit more in depth on how the Detroit Lions give up points, we got to go into their defensive splits. Right? We got advanced analytics because we don't have. I mean, I could, but NFL will demonetize the hell. I mean, if we put up their plays, their actual video, but if you're talking about what they're doing, they do allow teams to score in the red zone. It's the exact opposite of the unstoppable force meets the immovable object. It's the completely stoppable force meeting the very movable object. Which one's going to be worse? Because when you get into the red zone against the Detroit Lions, you generally score. And what I mean by that, 11 touchdowns. They've allowed receiving touchdowns inside the 10, 16 inside of the red zone. And that's literally when they've given up 19 passing touchdowns. Once you get down there, they let you have success. Completion rate inside the red zone is 59%. We talked about the New Orleans Saints struggles at 26%. Well, the Detroit Lions kind of have the opposite problem. If you get down there, you will score, right? 8 rushing touchdowns in the red zone. Now, you don't expect rushing touchdowns to come outside the red zone, but this is a team that if you move down there, they are going to let you score. And I'm not saying that they are the worst team in the NFL. Again, I really want to be very clear that I'm not over here pretending like the Detroit Lions are a bad team. They are a very good team. They are 8-3 for a reason, and I'm really excited with Dan Campbell, Ben Johnson, Aaron Glenn, and even John Fox and Jim Hostler, who are up there, what they're doing. I really am. But if there is a way to score, it is the fact that they have found no way yet to be consistent when it comes to stopping teams in the red zone. And it also should be noted that away games are where they struggle the most right now defensively as well. In terms of away games, they've only been able to force 5 interceptions. They're allowing a 92 quarterback rating in away games and have allowed 10 touchdown passes while having right around the same rushing rate. I mean, they're pretty decent in terms of rushing. So generally, I think that the New Orleans Saints have opportunities to move the ball. I mean, Derek Carr is right that they have moved the ball a little bit this year. They just are failing to capitalize in the red zone. And then I will also add real quick, because Nick Underhill, shout out Nick Underhill, is actually asking questions that most fans would appreciate being asked. Nick Underhill is, hey, how do you marry, this is basically the quote, how do you marry the idea, the ideas of the success that you're having between the 20s and the red zone? And Derek Carr literally brushed him off and said, I'm not giving you that answer, right? Like, as if they've, and some of you deeper football nerds will appreciate this. It's like they've invented the East Coast offense and they don't want anybody to know about it yet. So, like, it's just, come on, man. How If you really figured it out, let somebody know. But won't even share what they're doing. And you can see the frustration on his face. And this is followed by, now I tweeted this, and I typically stay out of the drama, but I'll be honest. Wil Lutz is one of my favorite players that I've ever gotten to interview, right? There's just some guys you've gotten to interact with if you've worked in this business that you just enjoyed their demeanor, what they were in the locker room, how they were. You know, like I've gotten to interview Drew Brees. I'm not talking shit about Drew Brees. I'm sorry, I probably should have bleeped that. But like Drew Brees is not my favorite interview of all time. Like my favorite Saints interview. Is he the most famous Saints player I've interviewed? Well, obviously. But is he my favorite? No. But I mean, guys like Mark Ingram, Wil Lutz, those are my tops, right? And Wil Lutz had a passion for New Orleans, man. Like he loved being here. He loved this locker room. He was very devoted to this locker room. And he took some shots. Now, some people might not count this. I do. To me, this is a real deal, right? And I posted it on Twitter earlier today, but he actually went and liked, for those that don't know, Chris Rougarou, shout out to Rougarou Reports, covers the New Orleans Saints as well for 12 Up Sports, The Spun, SI Now, Boot Crew Media, etc. And he talked about how Dennis Allen is struggling. To be clear, Chris literally tweeted, "Fire Dennis Allen. Don't make the fans go through another year of this BS." And Wil Lutz liked it. But Wil Lutz didn't just like that tweet. He also liked the tweet that said Dennis Allen is an awful coach who finally got to pick his quarterback, and his only calling card, his defense, is now a liability. If Mickey Loomis isn't ready to make a change, he's out of his mind. Wil Lutz also went and liked that. I took screenshots of it, shared it out on Twitter. And I normally am not for drama, but this really builds on what we've been talking about lately, which is that the New Orleans Saints are struggling. The New Orleans Saints are struggling with identity. Now, Wil Lutz has since unliked said status. What does that say? Somebody in the PR department was like, yeah, you really need to stop trash talking. It might have even been Sean Payton. You really need to stop trash talking Dennis Allen. But you've got former players taking kicks and shots. You've got a quarterback who won't answer basic questions in the media. You've got a team that just lacks confidence. And I'm not the negative person. Actually, I'm actually pretty proud that part of my content being known for is being such a positive person. But if you're going to beat a Detroit Lions team that has been so successful this year, the word that keeps getting repeated is identity. And Alvin Kamara really spoke about how this team doesn't have an identity. Dennis Allen tried to allude to that they do. And at some point, you have to prove one of them is right or wrong. And this weekend is just as good as much time as any to prove. Right? So if you are going to be a team that has success, one thing you got to do is beat good teams. So we'll see if that ends up being the case here. Dre, by the way, Who Dat Nation and media is united right now like never before. I wouldn't even say that because I've seen this before. The freshest drama is always the drama you remember the most. Like recency bias is a thing. I remember the Saints going 7-9 with Sean Payton, with Drew Brees. And I was there saying that Drew Brees should move on and that Sean Payton should move on. And I'll be honest, I haven't changed my opinion. You know, as much as I love Drew Brees, he clearly outplayed his physical ability. Like he was so gone physically that he was being carried in some ways at the end of his career. And that is not, I promise, I'm not talking Drew Brees. But Drew Brees now even says he cannot throw a football like above his shoulder. He can't make football throws. And if you study the Saints all 22, and Nick Underhill has talked about this, there are literal plays that they didn't call anymore. Like, I don't know if Gabe's still here, but like, I have the New Orleans Saints 2015 playbook. Like, I've got it. And a lot of people do. I'm not special. There's a lot of things in that playbook in 2015 they would not run in 2018, 2019, etc. Because it was at the end of the days. So I've seen like media, fans, etc. frustrated. But I would say this. Those teams at least had a hope at potentially the end of the horizon. Even when they were 7-9, you still had we still have Sean Payton, we still have Drew Brees. There's a chance. There's not that same level of hope with a Derek Carr and Dennis Allen. And that's why this game is so important, because this game could insert some of that hope. Moving back to 6-6, taking control, hopefully, of the division, And trying to show some level of identity would give fans hope because you play Detroit, but then you got Carolina, and then you got New York, and then you've got the Rams, Tampa, and the Falcons. It truly is a fact that the Saints' destiny is in their own hands. But losing 3 games in a row, Minnesota, Falcons, Detroit, really makes that process more difficult. So you've got to find a way to show this identity that you say that you have, right? So like when I look at this team, there are things that the New Orleans Saints do well offensively and have done much better offensively lately. Even Mickey Loomis talked about this. Now, I'm only going to speak these things out of fairness. I'm not trying to like make anybody upset. So here are some examples of what the New Orleans Saints have started doing well offensively. From the 20-yard line to the 50-yard line on their side of the field, they're throwing the ball 70% completion percentage. That's good. You like 70%. That is efficient, effective, moving the ball football. Inside the 49 through 20 of the opponent, they're still throwing 64% completion percentage, which is not bad. That's not bad at all. Moving the football has also improved in the running game. How do I know? Between the 21 and the 20. So literally between the 20s, the New Orleans Saints are averaging 4.3 yards per carry. And that's after having the first part of the season be a real struggle bus. They have definitely improved between the 20s as an offense. Now, here's the part that everybody's been waiting on. In the red zone, they suck. Like they are ineffective. They're one of the worst teams in the NFL in the red zone. But there is truth to the fact that if you can move the ball, you can score the ball with the correct play calling and the correct execution. And again, we're talking about a Detroit Lions team that gives up the 24th most points in the NFL. Right? So, you do have a path to victory against the Detroit Lions. Believe it or not, it's not a complete loss. Now, for those who are curious about the line, I believe Vegas set it at -4, right? Like 4 points to Detroit, I think. So, I think that's a fair line. I think that the New Orleans Saints are the worst team right now out of the two. They are the team that you should be the least confident in. But at the same time, the separation between the two is not as great as the angst, anguish, ire, etc. that we're experiencing says it is. Right? So you can definitely win, and there is a path. Can you get that path? Let's get some of these comments in real quick. Mr. Don says, I hope we're playing better by the Giants game because I'll be in the Dome for that one. Well, I hope they win because you're in the Dome as well. I really, really do. Vlad says 2018, 2020 Drew Brees still look like a top 3 quarterback in the league, which is crazy. I would say, just as a film study guy, I don't really think that Drew was probably top 3 at that time, maybe top 5, but that really just comes down to the fact that there were just some throws he could no longer make. And it's really tough to just say, hey, a guy is a top 3 guy. Like, he's the best. Because if you're in the top 3, you're in the argument for being the best quarterback in the NFL. I can't really call you the best quarterback in the NFL if there are literal throws you can't make. But he was still very good, right? So he was still elite. Let's put it that way. And he was way better than anything that we've had the past couple of years, whether it's Teddy Bridgewater, whether it's Jameis Winston. And I remember Drew Brees looking over to Jameis Winston and saying, it's your team now. Like, you've got to, go out and do it. And I've said it before, I don't feel like Winston never got a legitimate chance of that, especially after the injury, but that is what it is. But whether it's Winston, whether it's Hill, whether it's Bridgewater, whether it's Carr, nothing's worked to get the New Orleans Saints to the level of consistency they need to be successful offensively. Right? So this is the opportunity to prove the doubters wrong. Because if you can beat the Detroit Lions, you can officially beat everybody else in your roster. And actually, if you can beat the Detroit Lions, you can beat a playoff team. Like, that is actually what that means. If you can beat the Detroit Lions, you can win a playoff game. And I know as Saints fans, it's very difficult to hear or even want to believe that. But, it's just a fact. If you can beat the Detroit Lions, you can win a playoff game. That's just truth, because Detroit will be in the playoffs. They are 8-3, and barring a monumental late 1980s Chicago Cubs collapse, they're going to be in the playoffs. If you can beat the Lions, then you've proven that you have some level of identity to go forth and win the rest of your schedule, which should be a cakewalk. At the same time, The Detroit Lions are 8-3 for a reason. Let's talk about the things that the Detroit Lions are doing very well, because I've talked about how you can win. And the short answer is capitalizing in the red zone. Even though the New Orleans Saints struggle with that, the Detroit Lions do give up a lot of points. But let's talk about what the Detroit Lions are doing extremely well. And I think that they are doing very efficient football. Both Gibbs and Montgomery are averaging around 5 yards per carry. The offensive line is playing quite well, in my opinion. I believe that the offensive line for the Detroit Lions is underrated. And when we talk about the great offensive lines around the league, all we ever worry about is pressure. And I do agree that, because I'm not saying Detroit Lions is the best offensive line, but I am saying that we always get so enamored with the passing game because it's a passing league. Derek Carr, for example, has been pressured on 14.2% of his dropbacks this year. Jared Goff has been pressured on 21.5%. When it comes to pass protection, the Detroit Lions have not been amazing, but Goff gets the ball out quickly, which Derek Carr has not been doing, unless you're counting the interception of Jesse Bates. And then you run into the issue of you got to run the ball, right? Like we talk about all the time. Like, yes, it's a passing league, but you can't be one-dimensional. Like, if you are nothing but a passing team, teams can stop you. You know, there are coverages that excel at just doing just that. I mean, there's a reason that quarters coverage, cover 1, cover 3, Tampa 2, all these different coverages were created and existed to stop various levels of the passing game, and you had to have something that forced teams away from what's good to use against you. Well, that's what they have right now. Then they've got Amon-Ra St. Brown. Oh my goodness, the man is literally an Egyptian god. He's right at 1,000 yards receiving so far this year, as well as a tight end in Sam Laporta. Saints fans know that tight ends have given the New Orleans Saints a little bit of trouble so far this year, but Sam Laporta is on pace for right around 1,000-yard season. He'll probably end up around 850, 900 yards, close to 10 TDs. Sam Laporta is one of the scariest things to face here, as well as the fact that they have 3 running backs who I would all call effective, but the main 2 that you're worried about, Dave Montgomery, who we talked about being on the injury report, who is healthy, as well as the young Gibbs coming in. Both of those have combined just in rushing. I'm not even talking about their receiving yards. Just in rushing have already combined for over 1,000 yards and 14 rushing TDs. And they've also got a combined 25 broken tackles. To compare that to what the New Orleans Saints have done in terms of broken tackles, the New Orleans Saints as a team have 15 broken tackles. So, very potent offense, right? Like, if you want to believe that the New Orleans Saints can win this game, you need the defense that has been heralded, this defense that was elite, this defense that was what really most people believe is going to take them to the playoffs. They better show up, right? With Cameron Jordan probably missing this game, Marcus May missing is not the biggest concern for me, because I have really liked how the rookie has played at safety, but you do have that as a concern, right? Like, there are things that you got to worry about. You got to worry about Marshawn Lattimore being out, right? So there are definitely things that you should be concerned about. I mean, Miss Pammy says this is going to be a massacre, and it could be. It honestly, God, could be. But at the same time, if this team has shown one thing as a positive, and I do like focusing on the positives, they have definitely shown that they have resilience. Like, they've never given up in any game. And I love that about them. I really do. Now, that doesn't mean I love the product that has been put on the field this year. But I believe Alvin Kamara 100% when he has said that this locker room is together, and this locker room is not lost, and this locker room is on one page. They will fight to the bitter end. Now, they might be fighting with sticks in a game of guns, but they have resiliency. And I expect them to have an opportunity to win this game. I still don't think it's going to happen. But I do think that the opportunity is here. We'll see. Vlad says the record absolutely matters. Being around 500 gives you a chance to win the division. Agreed, it does. And the sad thing is, I see a lot of Saints fans talking about this. Truth is, if the Saints win this division, y'all know what that means. It means your man, myth, legend, Dennis Allen ain't going anywhere. Ain't going anywhere. Like, I really wish it was reasonable for him to just be the defensive coordinator. I do. Like, I'm just sitting here thinking, like, I really wish it was reasonable, because it's not reasonable, FYI, for anybody who's about to ask. It's not reasonable. But I really do wish it was reasonable for Dennis Allen to step down as head coach and just be the defensive coordinator. I really do wish that was reasonable. but it's not. So if the Saints win the division, DA is head coach. Yeah, Sky says the opportunity to win this game, cap. I don't think that's cap, Sky. If anything, remember, the thing that makes the NFL better than any other professional sports league is any given Sunday. And I am a full believer in that mantra. Just last week, you saw teams beat teams you didn't think they would beat. That is what makes this game so freaking awesome. I love this game. Hell, the Detroit Lions lost to the Green Bay Packers last week. And it wasn't in Lambeau. It was in Detroit. Right? Like, it happened. I watched it. I was there. I wasn't there. I wish I was there, but I wasn't there. The Browns, who were 7-3, lost to the Denver Broncos, who were a 5-5 team, just like the New Orleans Saints. Right? So it happens. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but the opportunity is there. The Vikings lost to the Bears. You know, and that's just the ones from last week. If I go a week before, I feel like there was a bigger one the week before that I'm forgetting about. I feel like there was a really big one that I'm forgetting about from like a week or two ago. What game was that? I mean, I do realize that the Broncos beat the Chiefs, and that was a really big deal a couple weeks ago. There was a game a couple weeks ago that I remember. Obviously, I don't remember, but I remember it being like my brain went any given Sunday, and that's exactly where my brain went to. What week was that? Maybe chat will remember before my brain kicks into high gear, but. You know, that's the nature of the NFL, and that's why I love it so much, is because that can happen legitimately any week. And I think that makes it special. I think that's what makes the NFL such a great league. I mean, yeah, it sucks that the New Orleans Saints are playing well below their roster talent, and they absolutely are. If anybody tells you that the New Orleans Saints aren't playing below their roster talent, then they're clearly not watching the New Orleans Saints. But yeah. Anyway, it's not cap. It's potential. It's just maybe not realistic. Saints do good between the 20s and kicking field goals. Sometimes they do. They have a kicker who injured himself because he's kicked the second most kicks in the NFL. So, man, it's rough being a Saints fan. But here's the thing. The New Orleans Saints are still tied for first, technically half game behind, in a division where everybody has a losing record. So, Underhill Mike Thomas going in on Carr should let the front office know it was a mistake. Well, I'll say this, King T. Like, I'll acknowledge that feeling, but also at this point, it doesn't matter because you're locked in for at least 2 years. So it really doesn't matter if it was a mistake or not. It's done. And I truly believe that with better coaching, Carr would look exactly what he is, which is a mid-tier quarterback. Just get him out of here. You can't. But I do agree with you that he lacks accountability. And King, I think you just came in. We talked about it earlier, like his press conference is either this morning or yesterday. I don't remember which one it was. And it just made me shake my head going like, dude, do you even hear yourself right now? Right? I do hate that they lack accountability. I hate that Dennis Allen is going full accountability for Derek Carr when he was very quick to say, hey, yeah, Chris Olave ran the wrong route. But then when we talk about, Derek Carr struggling in the red zone, he's like, hey, it's not productive to assign blame. No, it's very productive to assign blame. That's how you know to fix a problem. If you just ignore it, it doesn't go away, right? So I do believe that with better play calling and better circumstances, I do think Derek Carr could be better, just as you saw a Russell Wilson who, if this same time last year, if you asked any Broncos fan, they would have told you Russell Wilson was the biggest mistake that team has made in the past decade, maybe 2 decades, and they wanted him off. Well, Russell Wilson changed when he got a good play caller. And I think that same thing could happen to Derek Carr. I don't think that he ever is going to be a premier guy. I never think he's top 3. But I do think that the New Orleans Saints with the coaching change could be better. And the truth is, I think that's the thing that has to happen. The New Orleans Saints need to change coaches. And that's just the truth. Right? The New Orleans Saints need to change coaches. Is that going to happen anytime soon? No, probably not. But hopefully, we can hope. Like we can want and dream and envision. And here, I'll give you another one. Right? I use the Russell Wilson one so much because, one, y'all are familiar with Sean Payton. And I hate to bring up Sean Payton because I'm not trying to say that we should bring him back because obviously that's not going to ever happen. But I bring up Sean Payton because we know that he's a good play caller. I would probably no longer put Sean Payton in the top 5 play callers in the league right now, though I am curious to see where things end up being for the Denver Broncos long term. But did you know Russell Wilson has led more fourth quarter comebacks this year than last year throughout the entire season, and he's actually tied his career high in fourth quarter comebacks. I do not think that that is a unique thing to Russell Wilson. I think that's a unique thing to Sean Payton, right? Furthermore, just give you more examples. He has the lowest interception percentage in the NFL this year. Why do I think that's important? Because guess who also had the lowest interception percentage of his career under Sean Payton? Jameis Winston. Like, one of the biggest things that I think gets lost is Sean Payton was if he would have not been such a complete hole and screwed New Orleans, he really probably could have done something great with Jameis Winston. Like, Jameis Winston in a few games before the injury was really on pace to go, holy crap, this is a different quarterback. He really is different than what everybody said he would be. So, I say that because we talked about last episode, that could technically happen to Carr. I don't think he'd ever be, top 5. And sadly, you're stuck, right? Like, you can't cut Carr. And if you bench him, let's just be honest, teams don't bench guys that they're paying that much guaranteed money to. It's the sunk cost fallacy. If you've never heard of that, it's a fallacy, but it basically is the belief that you can't make a change because you've got so much invested into it. You're going to ride it out no matter what. That's the sunk cost fallacy. And Derek Carr is the sunk cost fallacy for the New Orleans Saints. And I think to an extent, so is Dennis Allen. And I said on the last episode, I don't really think any high up-and-coming offensive coordinator comes here while Dennis Allen is here. So I think the New Orleans Saints need to make a change at head coach. Now, I'm sorry that I went rabbit holing because we're supposed to be talking about the Detroit Lions, but honestly, this is how a lot of fans feel. So, yeah. Lester, we need to draft a starting caliber quarterback, let him sit behind the current QB and learn and fire the coach in OC. I have no problem with that at all. That doesn't help us win this week, but even if we beat the Lions, even if we win the division, I'm going to be one of those weirdos still probably saying fire Pete Carmichael. I will go ahead and say this. Y'all can quote me on it. That way, if I look like an idiot later, y'all can laugh at me. If the New Orleans Saints win the division and win a playoff game, I'm okay with Dennis Allen staying if Pete Carmichael is still fired. Or he is still not the play caller. I think the biggest problem on this team is Pete Carmichael, but I also think big problems on this team are Derek Carr and Dennis Allen. I think Pete Carmichael is the worst problem, but I think that there are a lot of problems. But the New Orleans Saints won't fire a guy who goes to the playoffs. But that doesn't mean they won't fire their offensive coordinator. So that's kind of like the hope I'm holding out. Because I'll also be honest, I am just not one of those guys that ever wants my team to lose. Like, come hell or high water, I'm a Saints fan. I was raised a Saints fan. I've always loved the New Orleans Saints. I've seen them bad. I've seen them good. I've literally had the honor and privilege to cover the team. Not only have I had the honor and privilege to cover the team as a sports writer, I've gotten to have my scouting reports read and seen and talked to coaches on the staff. I am invested in the New Orleans Saints my entire life, and I will never root for them to lose, even if that means that DA is the coach and Derek Carr is the quarterback. But at the same time, I can try to find a silver lining in something, right? And I think one of the biggest issues is the New Orleans Saints can't find another offensive coordinator right now. They've got to find somebody who's willing to come in and be that guy, and so far that's just not been the case, right? So far that has simply not been the case. And we'll just have to wait and see if that changes. But as of now, ain't nothing changing. Ain't nothing changing but a thing. So, yeah. Thank you, TJ, for the Discord drop, by the way. Mr. Don says, we think Carr should be benched, but the team isn't going to do it. Not this year. I agree. They're just not. I mean, now I would say this. There is a chance that Carr gets benched if the team loses this game and maybe 2 more games. Then they might start Jake Haener. So if the New Orleans Saints were to lose the Lions game, the Giants game, and then go lose to Tampa, they have almost no shot of winning the division anymore, and they're probably not going to win the playoffs. So that would make them a 5-9 team, and Tampa would have 2 wins over them. I'm sorry, they got to play the Rams before that. So you got to play Panthers too. Damn. Okay, I'll put it this way. If you lose Vikings, Falcons, Lions, Panthers. All right, so you lose the next 3 games. You go 5-9. Depending on how the rest of the division looks, you might see Jake Haener. But Derek Carr's not going anywhere, right? Because you're stuck to Derek Carr for 2 years. The contract is a preferably 3-year deal, but you could make 2 work. Like you could move after 2 if you needed to, right? You don't want to, but Mickey Loomis did, in my opinion, a really good job with that contract. Now, he didn't expect things to go as badly as they have, but I think the contract is good if you're a Saints fan. So I think the contract is good. Right? If they fall out of the playoff race, then yeah, but then Carr would be the starter again week 1 in 2024. Maybe. Probably. Likely. Yes. I was seeing Jake Haener said, Jameis, do you want the honest answer there at 8-10? Like, do you just want me to give you the honest answer? Because I don't necessarily like it, but I'll give you the honest answer if you want me to. This team does not see a future with Jameis Winston. Is what it is. I think that sucks. Jameis is literally younger. I hope he's healthy now. I think he looks good. I think he still makes boneheaded decisions, but I think that's just Jameis. But they do not, this current regime does not see him as the future of this team. So if they were to bench Derek Carr and then start somebody else, it would be Jake Haener. Right? Is what it is. Yeah. Don't we have to trash seasons under the same head coach and OC? What do you mean, Lester? What do you mean? What do you mean? Dennis Allen needs to be fired. He's never going to cut as a head coach. We would be crazy to bring him back. Well, Crass, he's under contract, so it's not even about bringing him back. When they signed his contract, Dennis Allen's contract was, let me see how many years it was. It was a 4-year deal. So he's currently in year 2 of the 4-year deal. And generally, head coaching contracts are also fully guaranteed. Generally, not always, so I can't say with certainty. But if I remember correctly, it was a 4-year, like $32 million deal. So that man's going to make $32 million regardless. He's going to make $32 million regardless. So the team, from a financial perspective, probably feels pressure to want to see it work with Dennis Allen because you're going to pay the man no matter what. So, yeah. Grass says Carr isn't the future either. Time draft quarterback. Yeah, the Saints don't disagree with you. Again, we've talked about this ad nauseum, but just to remind you, the Derek Carr contract is a very clear, we don't believe you're the long-term answer contract. It's one of the reasons I give Mickey a little bit of credit. I don't think Mickey is the best GM in the league or perfect GM. But I do think he did a good job with the Carr contract, is all I'm saying. I'm saying, isn't this his second season as coach leading this team to terrible seasons? Last year wasn't terrible. It was underperforming. This year is currently terrible. So this year's currently terrible. Yeah. I would say it's definitely terrible right now. So season over, why start Jake? Oh, Jay, the reason to start Jake Haener, if your season is over, is to build him real game experience. There's nothing that can replace in-game NFL snaps. There's nothing that can replace that. So if you do want to see if Haener is developing and if he's heading in a direction where you could maybe see him be a guy, then you give him some starts at the end of the year when you know your season's over. That would be why. Again, I'm not saying do it now. Again, I want the Saints to win football games. But realistically, that's why you would do it. I think we've done a great job of contracts for everyone. The team just isn't performing. Yeah, I don't have any issue with Loomis's contracting over the past couple of years. Now, I will say, Don, I do have an issue with Loomis not Loomis is too patient. Let me put it that way. Loomis is too patient with how things are going. That's my problem with Mickey Loomis. I have no problem with him with how he's doing his job in terms of the financial management of this team. I have a problem with his patience. And he is way too patient with Dennis Allen. If I was the GM, I would have walked my butt down there and said, why is Pete Carmichael still calling plays when he's doing this poorly? Right? That's what I would have done. I'm not the GM. I have an issue with him not being strict enough with accountability. And it's damning to me when the Pittsburgh Steelers can be a positive winning team, still fire Matt Canada because they acknowledge that he is making their team worse, and yet the New Orleans Saints are still sticking with Pete Carmichael. Because I really, honest to God, don't believe you can get much worse than the New Orleans Saints currently are. So a change at best would be a net neutral. It can't be a net negative. I really don't believe the offense can get worse. It'd be a net neutral. So make a change. That's where I have an issue with Loomis. I think Loomis did a great job with Carl Granderson's contract. If y'all don't believe me, look at Carl Granderson's contract and then go look at the defensive ends that just got traded for this this end season, and go look at the contract one of them just signed. I love the Carl Granderson contract. I really like the Derek Carr contract. It was very clear that Mickey Loomis was not tying the New Orleans Saints to Derek Carr for very long. I think it was a good job, right? I actually like the Honey Badger contract. So I have no issue with his contracts, but his patience, his willingness to be able to just sit there and then go on radio and say, I truly believe we have all the right guys in the building. Well, brother, I hope that you were in the radio station, because there ain't no way that you were in the facility in Metairie when you made that statement. You had to have been somewhere. Where were you? Were you at Harrah's, at the casino, gambling away the Saints' future? What were you doing? I want to know where you were at, because there's no way you were in the Saints facility when you said that statement. But it'd be like that. Real quick, I do want to get y'all's score predictions, chat. I do appreciate y'all being here, as always. We try to be as positive as we can through difficult times. I do love and appreciate every single one of you. Y'all are all incredible. I do really like you. I do really love you. So let's get some score predictions in. Let's do it. 27-9 Lions. Wow. Wow. 24-20 Saints. All right, Don. The first choice of Saints tonight. Who else are we going to have? Anybody else? Crass, I know you got thoughts. 992, I know you're opinionated. Come on, 810, what you got for me? 992 says, I think the offense will get worse with anyone right now on the offense as Coach Curry is part of the Carr problem. I don't know that Coach Curry is part of the Carr problem, to be honest with you. I really don't, because I think the problem is situational football. Situational football is dictated by how you are calling certain plays and then executing those plays. I don't think Curry's that problem. Al Rose says 33-28 Saints. Yikes. I don't believe it, but I would love that to happen. 992 says 31-24 Lions. AJ says 27-9 Detroit. That would be depressing. AJ coming in here straight in with a dagger and doing lay twist. Yikes. Why don't you got to do me like that, buddy? I thought you loved me. I thought you appreciated me. I thought we were family. Saints 17-7 from Sam. Crass 31-21 Lions. Can also definitely see that being the end result as well. Definitely see that being the end result as well. Curry is the QB coach. Yeah, Curry is the QB coach and passing game coordinator. But that doesn't make him the play caller, nor does that mean he's the one choosing what plays to run in what situations. That's the offensive coordinator. Execution would go down to Derek Carr. Now, that doesn't mean that Ronald Curry can't go and say, hey, I really like this play. We should do this right now in this situation. He could, but it's not his job and it's not his call. The sheet is in the hands of Pete Carmichael. So I'm not going to blame Curry. He's actually seen as an up-and-coming guy around the league. I think he deserves an opportunity to prove right or wrong. AJ says he's just living in the real world. Son, here, I'm going to let you borrow these. These are legal, right? I'm going to let you borrow my edibles. These are legal in the U.S., okay? You need to escape the real world. These are legal in Louisiana, more importantly. These are legal in Louisiana. You need to escape from the real world, buddy. Because if your real world is watching the Saints lose 27-9, I need you. You can borrow these. I will let you have them. Okay? Because you are my friend. You're my friend. You've been following this channel for years. I appreciate your support. You need to borrow these. If that's your real world, right there. Right there. Kennard says 31-15 Lions. Kennard, who's kicking that many field goals? Because Blake Groupie probably not playing, fam. The play calling was good for the Atlanta game. Carr just didn't execute. I mean, I would say that there was some good play calling, yes. Was there some bad execution? Yes. But you absolutely cannot tell me that the play calling was all good if all you got was field goals. I'm sorry. Carr, I know we want to say that, but Carr is not that incompetent. He's not. Is Derek Carr a top quarterback? No. Is he so bad that every red zone trip results in a nothing burger? He is literally not that bad. I'm sorry. He's not. Play calling in the red zone has always been an issue with Pete Carmichael, FYI. This is not a new thing. Pete Carmichael is just not very good at his job. To kind of really pin it in, before Derek Carr even got here, look at last year when you had guys like Andy Dalton and everything, right? And I'm not hating on Andy Dalton. I mean, hell, you're basically paying 16 times what you'd paid Andy Dalton to do Andy Dalton things, and honestly, maybe even a little bit worse. But last year, the New Orleans Saints, throughout the entire year, only had 9 TD passes inside the 10-yard line. That's it. That's all. That was last year. That's it. 9 throughout the entire season. The New Orleans Saints this year, inside the 10, and I know I'm cutting the red zone in half, have 6. Have 6 TD passes inside there, right? In terms of rushing, New Orleans Saints this year are averaging 1.4 yards per carry inside the 10. Last year, now again, it is a little bit harder to have success. They were 2 yards per carry. I mean, and they didn't score many touchdowns, as many as you would hope either in that area. It's not all on Carr. Now, I'm not saying that Carr's not a problem. It absolutely is. Jay, I did watch the film, dude. I did watch the film. I'm one of the only people in the Saints media who does watch film. I'm one of the only one that does that. And I'm not saying that there aren't good play calls that happen. There are. But that's also been all year long. But the red zone is not perfect. Red zone's definitely a problem. Red zone's definitely a problem. So, you think the Saints will draft a quarterback? Honest answer, Sam, no, I don't. No, I do not. Not in the first round, because I know that's what you're asking. You didn't watch this last game? Yes, I did, Jay. Yes, I did. Jay, there are 3 entire Saints people who do it, and I'm one of them, and I watch every game. Watch every game. Rev, please talk about penalties that killed red zone drives. Oh, so I can sound like Dennis Allen? No, thank you. I don't want to sound like Dennis Allen. I don't want to sound like Dennis Allen. I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be that guy. Yeah, Don, 2 people picked 27-9 New Orleans Saints. We'll see, though. I do think that there is a path to win here. And the key is getting some consistency in the red zone. It truly is the key. So, I heard the Saints have the oldest players in the league. We need good rookies and youngsters. The Saints are one of the oldest teams in the league. They're not the oldest, but they are one of the oldest teams in the league, yes. And some of their biggest names are older. But obviously, you need youth infusion. All right, guys, we're going to wrap up the show for tonight. I hope you've had a good one. I hope you've enjoyed it. I have tried to give as much positive as I can for what tonight is. But we'll see what things look like on Sunday. And hopefully we actually get a very pleasant surprise and a late Thanksgiving gift. I appreciate every single one of you. Who dat? God bless. Join the Discord if you haven't already. Hop up over on to the Twitter if you haven't already. Who dat? God bless. Catch you on the next one. And we're out.